two, one. Welcome to a very special edition of the Foster and Adoption Podcast, fellas. Al and
Hey,
Scott.
Hey,
hello,
Whee! Jingle
hello.
hey,
bells.
jingle
Whee!
bell.
Jingle bells.
Not only is it the 200th episode, let's give ourselves a round of applause, chaps.
I don't know if we'll hear it, will we?
Unbelievable.
I don't know if we'll hear it.
200, a huge milestone, which we'll talk about today.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it's our Christmas edition, or your Christmas edition. So we've
Yours, mine,
got
ours.
Mark Owers is. So we've got a double reason to celebrate. And here we are, the three wise men, or the three white men, or
Well, yeah,
the three unwise men,
yeah,
probably.
there
We'll
you
go
go.
with
That's
that.
better. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but hopefully we'll bring some nuggets of wisdom tonight's episode. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mark Owers. I'm the guest host today, and it is an absolute honour, Scott and Al. Thank you so much for inviting me to host this.
Uh,
And as an
is that
adopter,
selective memory?
sorry, go on.
Is that a selective memory because you did actually invite yourself on?
Well, I did think you needed to do something special. There's nothing more special than myself, I thought. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're
In
very
fact,
special.
I didn't even realize I'd invited you, so I'm sorry you're even here. Shit.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
Uh, but I mean, I'm a proud social worker, a proud adopter, so it's good to have you along on your show.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
and so some of your listeners will know that have had a little to do with foster and adoption over the years, alongside the 200 episodes. So it's great to be here to look back and to think about what you've been doing over those 200 episodes, where you think we've got to in foster and adoption, and also where you think we need to go. But along the way, as it's our Christmas special, there'll be all sorts of Christmas questions too.
Ooh.
Excellent.
So, how does it feel? 200 episodes.
Well, it's funny because I did put out that I put it onto Blue Sky because we're now on Blue Sky.
We are. I joined today.
Yes.
Oh, did you? Oh, fab.
Yeah.
Because that old place has gone to the dogs. Anyway, and I put out there actually we've done way more than 200 episodes, but it's just 200 episodes of me and Al talking that we've done. And we don't include conversations, specials, lives. What was the other stuff we've done? So Better Me, But You, is it? And all those kinds of things. They're all in
Yeah.
addition to this. So this is like 200 episodes of me and Al talking with like maybe a guest. Yourself, your good self has been on a couple of times as well.
Mhm.
And you're like we were saying before, you're only the second person ever to guest host one of our podcasts, and we're very privileged that you foisted yourself onto onto us to do it.
Yeah. Crowbar
So-
hours.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, we trust you implicitly with this. So, and you've done more prep than we have for tonight. So,
Combined.
yeah, exactly. But 200 episodes. It's 8 years. It was 8 years in October. 200 episodes of this plus the extra bits, and it just feels like we've been doing it about a year, maybe. Well, to me, it does. We've had ups and downs. We've had near-death experiences. We've had injuries. We've had illnesses. We've had grandchildren. All that sort of stuff. All that stuff has happened in that 8 years, and I think you forget just where we've. Well, no, that sounds really stupid to say where we've come from, but we just started off as a hobby, and it still is a hobby. But
Yeah.
people listen
We've
to it,
only
so
had
why not?
one threatened lawsuit as well, which I think is really good.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that, but yeah, just one.
Just the one. It was enough.
Enough to scare us, yeah. No, it didn't
Yeah,
actually.
heavens.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's my take on it anyway.
Al, what about your take?
Yeah, it just seemed like inevitable. It couldn't not be done. I remember, in fact, the year before we even started, I went to someone. If people remember the Adoption Social, and people might remember that, they were kind of a cohort or a collective or a cooperative of adopters. And I said to them, "You should really do a podcast." And then I waited a year, and I thought they haven't done it, so I'm just going to do it. And I had no idea where it would go really, but I've just. To be honest, it was funny because the main reason I do it is because I really like Scott, and I know but if we're being honest, and so like we scheduled some up so you wouldn't be aware, and then so like for 5 weeks we've not podcasted, and I've really, really missed like just getting
Oh,
on the Zoom and having a chat with you. And that's the engine of it all, really, is that
mm,
we just have such a good crack, and the
we do.
guests are slightly incidental.
And I'd forgotten actually when you said the word crack there, because that's obviously an Irish saying. I've moved countries since it
Oh
started as
yes,
well. Like
oh
I live in a
yes.
different country now. And I think when I first moved, I was little bit concerned that, it might fall on its flat on its backside, but we've made it work. I think because it was always online anyway, even before COVID, when everything went online, we were always doing it online. Granted,
Skype.
some of the sound quality is questionable, but we made it
Yeah.
work, and we still do it. We see each other as much as we can, or as we want. I don't know.
As,
um,
as our lawyers will let us do something like
exactly, but
that.
but even to be able to move and do it like that as well, it just shows how
Yeah.
flexible we are in keeping it going. And Al is right. I think we would class each other as probably as close to best friends as you could be. Yes, the podcast is the kind of golden thread that runs through us, but we do enjoy doing it. Absolutely.
Oh,
It's like a bit of therapy when we've done a podcast because we just have an amazing giggle and a laugh. So
The Ant
true.
and Deck of the adoption and fostering world.
What hinge and bracket I was
Hinge
thinking
and
more
bracket.
of.
Steptoe and Son.
yeah.
So,
Yes.
The unpaid Ant and Dec step to one son.
Yeah. Little and
yeah,
large.
Yeah.
yeah. Dumb and
Yeah,
Dumber,
and that's
probably.
and that's the other thing because I'm sure people think we get paid for it. And we don't, this comes out of our own pocket as well. We pay to do, well, I say we pay to do it. I mean, like I say, some of the sound quality hasn't been the best over the years, but we've invested in this ourselves. So we don't get paid for it. We're not sponsored by anybody, all that kind of stuff. And yet we still do it. So,
Well, I'm
it's
really thankful that you're paying me tonight. So that's so
yeah.
kind of you.
Good
Festive
luck getting any money
spirit.
out of Al.
Yeah.
So Christmas, mince pies or Christmas pudding?
Oh, mince
Oh,
pies,
oh.
Christmas puddings, yuck.
I,
Mm.
can I have both? I mean, I would just
Yeah,
on
you can have
Christmas,
both.
on my Christmas dinner would have to be. I would have to have Christmas pudding. Yeah, I would have to have Christmas pudding. Yeah, absolutely. There you go.
On its own, cream, brandy butter,
I don't
custard.
like. Yes, all of that. I'm like when I go into Christmas with all boundaries and common sense. I do like a bit of brandy butter, even though I don't like brandy. But there you go.
Nice.
Oh no.
And here's a Christmas social care question.
Oh,
If Santa were a foster carer, what would his Ofsted report say?
Mhm.
I think it would require improvement, to be honest with you. I mean, in terms of having to put us together a safe care plan, the whole creeping around in the night thing and into children's rooms
Yeah.
Yeah.
is
Well, I was
just
just going to say,
somewhat
if you
questionable.
got through the DBS check to start with, that'd be quite funny, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Given some of
Yeah,
his ways
yeah.
of doing. So yeah.
And where would you
And
get the
especially his
references from?
association with animals as well.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, where'd you get the references from? Because he's not employed, so all of that DBS checks and the local
Yeah.
authority checks.
Lots
It's
of gaps in his
problematic.
CV.
He'd
Oh,
follow the first hurdle, man.
I tell you,
Yeah.
yeah. And health and safety. Where's he keeping those animals? I mean, it's just a nightmare
Yeah.
when you think about it, isn't it? God bless him. Yeah. Would he be the
Not to
primary
mention his
carer, or would?
finances.
Oh yeah. Oh crikey. What would Mrs. Claus be the primary carer, or would he be the primary carer?
Yeah, he's probably the reluctant carer. We only see him once a year.
You do
Yeah,
know this man
unannounced
doesn't
visit.
exist, don't you?
What do you mean he doesn't exist?
Hopefully, there's no
I
How
mean,
cameras
he's
in
very.
really
the
good at meeting
place.
deadlines.
Oh, yes.
True.
Eh?
What about his
Always
logs?
delivers personalised presents as well.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
What
Yeah.
up
But
his daily logs? That's the thing. Daily logs. If we
Yeah.
don't get the logs, he can go and hang. Bless him.
and his delegation's not great either. All those he relies too heavily on his elves and others, doesn't he, as well? So
Yeah,
True.
support network, though. You could argue a good support network. I mean, he's
yeah,
got, it's tried and tested, but we have to then put the DBSs on the elves, do we? It's a big question.
yeah. Yeah.
That's true. And his medical, because I mean, if
Oh,
images are to be believed, then he'd be well overweight, wouldn't he?
it's
Wow.
BMI. Woo.
Oh.
Yeah.
I
You
tell
never
you,
get through the health check.
a panel
So
would have a
basically,
nightmare.
he's not a foster carer.
You're not a foster
No,
carer. No.
I mean, yeah.
Well, with that in mind, how has
You've, you,
fostering and
you've really
adoption
got me thinking
changed?
about that.
I know. I can tell. That's why I'm going to
Oh
move
my
us on.
God. Yeah.
We can
God.
It's a
come back to that,
nightmare.
Scott, as it pops up.
Yeah.
So, over the 200 episodes, how has fostering and adoption changed?
Ooh.
And for the better or for the worse, or or neutral, I suppose. Not made any difference.
My
Oh,
instinct
that's a
is to
really good
jump in, but
question.
I'm going to let Al go first on this because
Oh, because he's going off. He's forgotten we're videoing this. He's
no,
gone off to
my foot's
get
still
his.
enough. Oh, put my feet
Okay.
up.
What if we started in 2016, I think that we were still on the ascendancy. There was a real sense of government were putting lots of money in, maybe the REAs that were had just kind of reached the pinnacle of it's all going to happen. The Adoption Support Fund was in its infancy. I would say it was probably a time of real optimism. Um, and I just wonder whether that's been eroded to an extent. It feels like for all of that investment and all of that change, have we seen changes in outcomes? And I guess I wonder whether if we were to do and I know Dr. Judy Sullivan is probably is returning to, isn't it? Sort of beyond the adoption order 10 years on. Um, are we still looking at those it's a very crude statistic, but that third of families doing okay, a third of families good and bad, a third of families really struggling. Has any of all of that structural change and all of that money, has it changed that? And I'm not sure. I mean, you probably know the statistics because you are literally at the beating heart of government. So I don't know. I think it was a ride, mind. It was a ride. Is that a terrible thing to say? I'm on the
Yeah.
non-alcoholic beer tonight, so it's just in case Social Work England are watching. Non-alcoholic.
You'd have just done your re-registration, so you'd be all right for another 12 months. And they did say they weren't going to look at any CPD, so you're okay, I think, for a bit, Al.
I've dodged that bullet for another year.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And
Scott,
I think it's changed quite a lot actually. I think that and I'm looking at it from the other side. So what I was saying is absolutely spot on. But when I think back to 2016 and kind of the voices of adoption were the parents, very much the parents. And I do get into arguments about this sometimes where people go, well, it should be the voices of people who've been adopted to listen to, and I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. But back in 2016, there wasn't anybody really sticking their head above the parapet and going, "Hi, adopted. This is how we need to do it." Blah blah. And that's only in the last maybe 3, 4 years that that's really come through, and it's great that it has. And I think that change in itself has made a dramatic difference in terms of service provision, and a lot of these organizations have kind of changed their approach to things as a result of that, which is fantastic. It's
Mm.
really much deserved. And I think as well, if we have to add in special guardianships, kinship care has come along in that
Yeah.
time as well. I mean, it was always there, but it's just there's a lot more of it now. So that's been a massive change, and I think that adoption is kind of it's not the golden ticket anymore. Now we could go into the whys and the wherefores of that. I mean, I would agree wholeheartedly with that adoption needs a review in terms of what it is and how it looks and contact, all the things that we've gone over and over and over again in the last few years. And because we're now in that kind of, I'm not sure what the figures are looking like at the minute in terms of number of people, number of children waiting to be placed for adoption, and number of parents and all that sort of stuff. But I know that it's kind of over say 100 years, the figures have gone whoosh, like down, kind of way down to where they used to be. 100 years, I don't think adoption was around 100 years ago, but you know what I'm saying. And as for fostering again, we've had all this money kind of invested in it, but actually we're not really seeing any dramatic change to it, apart from, again, number of foster carers sticking their head above the parapet and saying, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! This is getting, this is getting bad foster carers, if you like. We've had Sarah Wiki Wiki Doodah or whatever, Sarah.
Sarah Anderson.
That's the one, yeah. I just keep on going wiki wiki wow when she's on, and she's coming on again in a couple of weeks actually. So
Yes.
that'll be a
Yeah,
good
talk
episode.
about
But
her allegations report, isn't she?
yeah,
Yes.
so that'll be good. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just has it changed for the better? I don't think so. I think that the previous government probably just got too entrenched in what they were doing over 14 years. Hopefully, for all of the kind of slating that your current government, I can say that because they're not my government because I don't live here. But the current government, hopefully they'll kind of reinvest the time and energy to looking at it all. But again, it all costs money. So, but I do think that over those years, I think there was a lot of money invested. Now there's been a lot of money wasted in the sector on daft things. And again, I can say that because I don't live here, and I'm, don't work for an organization anymore, and I'm quite happy to, not sit in the fence on that sort of stuff. Plus, I'm not a social worker, so they can't take away my registration. Boom.
Boom.
Don't you sit on the fence. Al, what about fostering? Your answer was largely about adoption. What about fostering, do you think, over the
Oh,
last
well, I mean,
decade or so?
I guess I work in fostering, and I became a registered manager during that period. If I'm honest, well, I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because when you work in something, I think there's this human nature to think things are getting worse. And so, but what I've seen is the impact of financial cuts just slowly eroding the quality of social workers' work. And that's not them as individuals, but just in the environment that they're working in, meaning that they've got more children to look after, they've got more children to pay attention to. And I think that is impacting on the work that foster carers are having to do. I think that foster carers are, yeah, you just see this gradual erosion of the number of sort of people coming forward to foster, which is not necessarily just lack of funding in the system; it's a lack of funding in people's pockets. Um,
Yeah.
and I think, yeah, I mean, you are at the kind of the crux of all of that, where we're trying to see a system that can somehow do something different and have a total reshake up, because the model we've got is, it feels like it's a house of cards. It's just, it isn't gonna, it can't just keep dissolving. So I think we've not always, I mean, as a podcast, we've always sort of not really focused on fostering, but it's always been there.
Mm.
But the people we've had on have been quite remarkable people. I mean, even this last week we had foster carers on, and foster carers are amazing. And I think we just need to, everyone needs to get on board with that, even if they do it for
Yeah.
money. They're amazing, because it's a terrible way to earn a living. If you that's how you earn a living. Tesco, working at Tesco's is better in terms
Well,
of
it's definitely easier, and you
Oh yeah.
probably get
easier.
paid more money.
Mm.
I
You
Absolutely.
think
can
on the
clock off.
adoption space, I mean, you've just referenced Beth. For me, one of the most important changes we've seen, and I think I've said before here that I know Beth from when she was doing her doctoral research at UEA on contact after adoption,
Mm.
and she is absolutely, the country's leading expert. And we have finally got the system to realise that we should not be severing links
Yeah.
with kin,
Mhm.
and that our current approach to adoption needs modernising, and we
Hmm.
have to promote from the outset meaningful relationships with those where there is significant um, connection.
Mm.
And it doesn't mean immediate parents who have been in positions where, abuse has happened. But we're
Yeah.
talking about siblings, we're talking about aunties, uncles, we're talking about so many people that children deserve to continue to have relations with. And we've seen, I think, a massive shift there with the
Yeah.
Hmm.
judiciary, with lifelong
Yeah.
links, and the way in which the family rights group and adoption agencies now are working much more closely together, the
Mm.
way in which Beth and others' research is regarded. I actually think that is one of the most important things that we've seen changing in adoption, and we've got a long way to go. We've got to
Mm.
support people to understand how they make sense of this. Adoption triangle, adopters, the adoptee, the lifelong impact on them, but also kind of how we understand the needs of birth family members over the lifespan.
But
Well, this is
in
it
And
because
terms,
I was just going to say that because a lot of the time, especially like, I remember when we adopted, some of the comments that were made about our children's birth family were less than nice. And that was by social workers who should have really known better. But
Yeah,
of course, what that made us do was fear the birth parents.
yeah,
Now, now, all these years on, I mean, don't get me wrong, unless there was kind of a physical threat to me, I would have no fear over anything. But I think back to that and that time, it was almost like they were giving us a reason to kind of not maintain a
yeah,
meaningful kind of contact and all that sort of stuff. So if that's what was happening back then, and it has changed for the better, and would hope that the majority, and I'm talking about a massive majority of social workers are now truly understanding of that. That actually we don't, they don't say negative things about birth parents, and that actually birth parents are what has happened. And I'm not generalizing. I'm just saying what has happened, and in actual fact, there should be an opportunity to, to kind of build on that kind of relationship, whether it's a supervised relationship or whether it's an unsupervised. And thinking about people like Angela Fraser Wicks, who's who, uh, if you listen to not just her story, but actually the way she kind of reflects on her time and her experiences and stuff like that, it's madness. Actually, I feel for Angela more than I do for um, kind of adoptive parents who may say, "Oh, they didn't tell us this or they didn't tell us that," because that's it's just so I think absolutely bang on with that. I think that's the way it needs to
Mhm.
be, and it needs to continue getting better. Um, and if there's one social worker that's listening that thinks that that's not the way to do it, then go and give yourself a hard shake.
And it's if I can be honest and sort of let behind the scenes of the podcast, though, I think if I'm being really honest, I'm not sure I've said this to Scott, I probably have, is that there was things that I really wanted to communicate, and this is just as a busybody dad, adoptive dad, and I
Nosy
thought there was,
Parker.
well, yeah, a bit of a nosy Parker, but I thought actually the podcast has always been a tool to drive an agenda. If you think we haven't got an agenda, then you've not been listening, or you've not listened to enough. If you listen to 8 episodes in a row, you'll work out there's an agenda. And one of them was that idea of contact, that not to say that it should happen, but to say the question should be asked. Always, the question should
Mm,
always be
mm,
asked: is there someone this child should remain connected to? Because that, and I think that if you looked across all of our episodes, that is the one thing we often return to. And if you looked across the statistics of which episodes get listened to the most, it's that
mm.
and child to parent violence, which
Yeah,
is the two things that I think have driven things that I think we're quite passionate about, Scott and I.
yeah,
And so that influenced the guests.
yeah,
But we were meeting a demand, because I know that if we post stuff or we do a podcast, we know we'll get a response to that. Everyone that Beth does, and Angela Fraser Whisk, we've got Clarissa, um,
yeah.
we've got all of the birth mums who've been on, and the birth relatives, all of the parents who've connected. Those are the podcasts that people are drawn to, because
Absolutely. Yeah.
there is something. So yeah, maybe it's a tool for lobbying. Haven't
yeah,
necessarily
definitely.
said that before.
Mm.
I don't know how it's perceived, but that's makes me happy.
Not in that way.
I
Not in
think
that way.
I think you've always been one of the friendlier faces of adoption, in that you've been much closer to birth families than many um, of the most vocal kind of elements of the adoption system. My people who know me will know that I have two adopted children, and last year I went with my son to meet his birth mum about 18 months ago, so he would have been 16, and a few weeks ago we met his birth dad,
Wow.
and it was brilliant.
Mm.
And I kind of found myself sitting there thinking we should have been doing this years ago.
Yeah.
It was wonderful,
Mm.
and it's made all the difference to all of them.
Yeah. And
Uh,
Yeah.
and did you have the same kind of thing that we had? I mean, you were probably a professional when you were adopted. Were you? You were a social worker when you adopted, were you?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and the assessing social worker crawled all over me because I was a
Mm.
social worker,
Right. Yeah.
which was interesting. But anyway,
But did you have the same perception of like contact. And for anybody who's only listening, I'm putting my fingers in the air when I
Yeah,
say
yeah,
contact because we use it as an umbrella term rather than a
yeah.
kind of specific thing. I mean, did you have the same perception in that, or were you like, damn, no, I'm gonna, one day I'm gonna do this, or is that something that's changed over time?
No, I think I've learned uh, over time just how important it is. I mean, we were really fortunate because we met, my wife and I met our son's birth mum, well, our two children's birth mum.
Yeah.
They have different dads uh, at the beginning,
Mm.
and I've said this to her since. Like, we could have adopted her.
Yeah. Mm.
Mm.
And we talk about it's not just about adopting the children; it's about adopting the birth
Yeah.
family, their identities, their history, don't we?
Mm.
Don't we? But I literally could have adopted her.
Yeah.
Mm.
So right from the beginning, we had this real strong sense of yes, there were reasons why her children, and I'm really clear they're her children. We share them.
Mm. Mm.
Uh, Came into care, but if she'd had more support, they'd still be with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
but no, I've
Yeah.
I've come a long way, Scott, in my own understanding,
Mm.
and I think a lot of people have.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And you suddenly get to a point in some of the national meetings that I've been in over the last decade, you suddenly think, are we really doing adoption like this?
Mm.
It suddenly just hits you and you think, oh my God,
Yeah. And
why?
who are we doing it for?
Yeah,
That's all this question I come back to. Who are we doing adoption for?
yeah,
Because, for a long time it's for parents who couldn't have children,
yeah.
But that was a very, very different time and that was how it was kind of deemed. And now are we doing it? I guess we're moving into that space now, aren't we? Where, you know, um, prospective adopters are coming into this system, and they're being told from the off, look, forget what you think it's going to be like.
Yeah,
And then, they're really starting at kind of almost brass tacks. And I hope it's the same in every place. But, even now, I think there's still some people that will be coming through the system and just, going, well, privately they'll be thinking, well, when they come to us, we'll fix them and, all that sort of stuff. There still must be parents like that. And then they go on to struggle and, blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
But I would hope the majority really understand that, this isn't a kind of, just a way to become a parent anymore.
I think we're definitely on that journey.
Yeah.
But there is still some way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
You
yeah,
know
I
how
mean,
distracting that pom pom is in your head, Al? It keeps on flashing in and out, and it's like it's almost like you've got a siren.
yeah, I need to speak.
Yeah.
Al is thinking.
Stick your head in when you want to speak.
I need to,
It is
I'm
flashing
having
on
a
and off.
thought.
It's charging his battery up.
Yeah.
No, that's really,
The
that's interesting.
neuroscience actually on his head.
I have to wear it in the office. Just,
Yeah,
just make sure I'm still functioning. Oh, it's fascinating because I do think that that is, to me, it's the make or break issue for adoption. If we want, and I still believe that there are some children who just should not remain with their parents, but I still see I'm part of lots of different, like, just I guess out of curiosity, but also just kind of I like to keep abreast of what's going on. But being in parts of groups where people are coming, like at the very first steps of adoption, and you still see these people going, well, I'm not sure I'm going to tell my kids. And you kind of,
Mm.
and so that
Oh,
hasn't gone away.
God.
And, people,
Yeah.
people coming on sort of and sheepishly, and, God bless them, they're looking for help. They're going, my child is 7 and we haven't told them yet. How do you think I
yeah,
should break it to them?
Mm.
And you go, oh man, were you not, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
did you not pay attention? Did you miss that day in class?
Yeah.
So I think it's, I mean, and I totally empathize. I mean, I do get a lot of flack online because I am pro contact, but that doesn't mean I want there's people in my children's lives that they should never meet
Mm.
for really good reasons. But
Mm. Mhm.
but there's an awful lot of people that they could have met.
Yeah.
There's more people they
Absolutely.
could have met than people they
Mm.
shouldn't have met.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
and just briefly on fostering,
Oh,
um, foster carers are leaving in their droves and have
Mm.
been for a long time. Uh, and I am, as you know, spent nearly a year with Martin there looking at the fostering system in 2017, and we wrote a report which basically hit a sand dune really hard and didn't go anywhere. Josh picked it up in his review of the care system. But here we are with around 70 odd % of all children in care living in foster care, and we're still doing very, very little in that space. And as you said, Scott, Al, you said, and Scott, I know you know this as well, but foster carers are amazing people. They are the world leading volunteers of volunteers.
Mm.
But this fostering system has to change as far as I'm concerned. We need to financially support them, and we can't carry on seeing them as volunteers. The world has changed, and people who used to foster won't foster again for those reasons. And it isn't about money, but they need money.
Mm.
And I do think the way in which we
Mhm.
understand what professional means in foster care is going to have to change.
Absolutely.
I think the relationship between children's social workers and foster carers has to change because the statutory imbalance creates a tension which is horrible for social workers and it's horrible for foster carers. And we have to deal with that inherent tension. And I was talking to Sarah Anderson the other day about this, as you've already mentioned her. If you ask a foster carer if they know who their child's social worker is, then that's good. If you ask them if they've seen them more than a handful of times the same one, then that's very good. If you ask them if they've got a really positive relationship with the children's social worker, I'm not talking about supervising social workers here,
Yeah.
then that's amazing. And if you say, do you feel the love between you and the child's social worker? That's unheard of. How can
Yeah.
that be?
Mm.
How can that be? They're in exactly the same
Yeah.
place, but they're at the opposite end of the continuum, aren't they?
Yeah.
They should be hand in glove, like all over each other, doing their best for the child in the foster family.
Yeah.
But the social worker, by design, spends far too much time interfering and interrupting and disrupting because of statutory oversight. And
Yeah.
we've spent all this time assessing and approving foster carers, and then we review them every year, but we're not very good at letting them get on with it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and I'll say this, and this won't go down well in some quarters, but we also have enslaved foster carers, and they are commoditized because we don't let them move. So we will treat them badly, and these are some of the most amazing people who just give all day long, who will not give up even when they feel like they're being treated badly. But they can't go to another fostering agency very easily
Yeah.
because they're enslaved because of the lack of portability. And
yeah.
and we've commoditized them, so we kind of make money out of them.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and you couldn't do that to a kinder group of people. And we just don't seem to be doing anything about it.
No. And it's funny because I always used to think of foster carers as feisty, and I understand why. They're advocates for the children that they're responsible for. They are doing, like you say, an amazing job. And they do it for their own reasons, obviously. And do you know what? Even if it is financial, if they're looking after that child and they're giving that child the you know the nurturing and all that sort of stuff that they need, then who gives a crap whether they're in it for the money?
Well, yeah.
Because let's be
Yeah.
honest, are they really in it for the money? Because I mean, I was a foster carer for a year, and believe me, I couldn't make any money out of it, even if I tried. But I think that you're right. The statutory stuff is the stuff that hits because
Mhm.
there's so many rules and so many bloody regulations, and that is the one thing, it's the one thing that made me think once we obviously adopted Jacob from being a foster child, I would never do this again because of all the statutory stuff that was going on. And it's not to say that it wasn't, it's not to say that I was, doing anything that I shouldn't have been. What I'm saying is, all those things, these foster carers still need to live. They still need to have a home life. They still need to, it's their homes. Having I'm telling you right now that supervising social worker, not the children's social worker, supervising social worker, the day she put her foot in the door on an unannounced visit, as if to say, "Ha, got you." That was the day that I lost faith in the agency
Yeah.
and just went, okay, I can't, I don't want this because this is my home.
Yeah.
Whether she does an unannounced visit or not, it's my home, and I want to feel safe in my home. Now, it's not that she was, 7 foot and 7 foot tall and 7 foot sideways, and I was scared of her. It's not about that. It's about the statutory stuff that comes to that because it's quite intimidating.
Yeah.
And
I
that's what
disagree with you.
needs to be looked at.
You're wrong.
Go on then. Go on
I
then,
think
Mr. Social Worker.
no, absolutely, because I think it's about social work skill. I
Mm.
do unannounced visits all the time, and there's
Yeah.
a way of doing them that means you do it with cooperation, and you do it in a way
Yeah.
that's like, that everyone knows that sooner or later I'm going to turn up at their front door, and when I do it,
Mhm.
I do it in a way that's compassionate and empathic, and I will,
Yeah.
Respectful,
respectful.
Yeah,
empowering.
absolutely. And and bear in mind, that's how I felt on the very first unannounced visit. We knew it would happen at some stage, but I just didn't expect it to make me feel the way it did. And it put me off straight away. Do you
But
know?
I would never force my way into someone's house, and
No.
unless they were refusing to let me in,
Mm.
if you know what I mean. I would come and go. What I would do is I'd go knock in and you'd go, "Hi, Scott," and you'd go, "Have I missed a meeting?" Because every foster carer goes, "Oh, I've missed a meeting." And I was going, "Really sorry," she announced to visit, and they go, "Oh, we're just having our tea," and I go, "Oh,
Yeah.
look, if you're having your tea, let me just have a look, and I'll be gone. Really sorry."
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
and
Exactly. There's a way of doing it. There is a way of doing it.
yeah,
Yeah.
but if I put my foot in your door,
Yeah.
expect to get my toes broke.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But
And
I don't think it's social workers per se. And I do think we hear those stories, Scott, and
Mm,
that's not uncommon.
mm,
And of course we hear your side as well, Al. There are some amazing social workers, but the lack of support, the lack of stability, the churn, the financial challenges, the regulatory challenges as interpreted by some managers, the kind of deficit-based models of practice that exist too much, puts social workers under a tension, a pressure, a challenge, which I think they struggle to keep at bay.
mhm.
And sometimes it's the foster carers that feel the kind of end of that. And I think it's just we've got to help social workers
Yeah,
and foster carers to get on better. And I think that requires a different type of leadership. And I think we can do it in the existing regs. I don't think
yeah,
we need to necessarily change the law, because brilliant social work and brilliant foster care together already exists and happens every day. It's just not systematic.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Or
I
into
was
the
going
long
to just
grass. But
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
haven't you got a new job? Aren't you in charge of trying to change the world through fostering? Is that the name of the
I'd
company?
like I'd like to be in charge of it, in a in a uh, in a way where I wasn't responsible for it. What do they call it? Leadership without authority, where you're not the boss, but you kind of encourage people to do the right thing. Um, we are looking at how we can help local authorities to reset their relationship between social work and foster care,
Mm,
and using the power of mediative skills to just recognize there's an inherent tension. And how do you, in mediation, they say you can't mediate late enough, but also you can't mediate soon enough. Uh,
Yeah,
and I just think local authorities, given the pressure they're under, and it's coming from everywhere,
mm.
complexity, demand, financial support,
Yeah.
they just
yeah,
need some help to reset those relationships. And I don't think it takes much just to
Yeah.
remind people that they're on the same side, and that whilst they feel a long way away from each other, I think they're absolutely in the same place. They just
Mm,
care about the kids they're working for.
yeah.
It just
And,
works differently.
and I'm just thinking there, I read a lot of teachers going through the same thing. They've done all the training, they've become teachers. Um, Same with social workers, they've done all the training, become a social worker, and then within a year, couple of years, it's like, whoa, this is just, and then they
Yeah,
end up leaving. And you could deem it for the same reason, and there's a common thing going on there. There's a common common thread, and that is the world of Ofsted. And I'm not blaming Ofsted. I'm not saying that they're at fault, but I think when you have such a strict kind of criteria of things to be able to aim for, and I know that that teacher, that head teacher who sadly took her life year before last, I think it was, because her school needed improvement or was inadequate. I can't remember how they rate it. You kind of think, well, so local authorities are kind of going through that as well, with social workers, and then look at the amounts of money that have been cut from budgets in terms of social care, over the years, over the last 20 years, let's say. This isn't your bins being emptied. This is actually, you know, this is local authorities who have to provide statutory services with minimal budgets. Another example would be, my mum sitting in Norfolk. She can't leave the house because she's immobile. She's more or less housebound, not getting any help from the local authority because they have no money to be able to spend on it. So it's not just our children and the foster care system and all that sort of stuff. It's older people as well because the budgets have been cut that bloody tight. That local authorities are in this position where they're unable to invest in social workers to keep them to I'm not generalizing again because there's some amazing social workers out there, and I know there is because I've met a lot of them. But what I'm saying is that if somebody disengages and just sees it as a job, that's when they're in trouble.
Yeah.
So if local authorities aren't able to keep social workers engaged, keep them feeling supported, keep them feeling wanted, feeling wanted is a big thing as well.
Yeah.
Then we've had it. So,
favorite Christmas movie? Come on.
oh, Love Actually, every time.
Why?
For so many reasons.
Give us one reason.
I heard the main reason on the radio today. It reminded me because you sit there and you go, oh, let's watch Love Actually as a family, when the kids were 12 or whatever, and then the Joanna Page and Martin Freeman scene comes on where they're doing the porn scene. You're like, oh, I forgot about that bit.
Yeah.
And you've got 12-year-old kids going, okay, they've got the blankets over their heads, and you're sitting there going, oh, I forgot about that. But yeah. But many other reasons as well. It's just a feel-good movie, I think.
Definitely. Al?
Oh, I really like the film Elf. I really just makes me laugh and laugh and laugh all the time. In fact, I was watching it last night with what's her face, and
Your love child, yeah.
Mrs. Christmas.
No, the Ben, what's that thingy doodle? She and I just laugh. I'm just laughing and laughing. That where he whispers to Santa, "You sit on a throne of lies." Just laughing and laughing. It's just so.
I could see you in that movie as well.
I'd be up for it. Yeah. So that's I
you
like
would.
that.
You'd be you would be brilliant at it.
Yeah. At
Thank
least
you.
it's not Die Hard,
Yeah, well, I would. I mean, if what's her face wasn't with me, I'd maybe slip into Die Hard. But yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Or the Tower Inferno.
Yeah.
We
what
love
about
the
you?
Grinch, how the Grinch.
The
We love
Grinch.
the Grinch. We love the Grinch.
I think
my son does a great impression of him.
I think I'm too much like the Grinch to like the Grinch. If that makes sense. I haven't changed my socials this year. My socials have remained the same. Normally, I change them every year to Bah Humbug or Ebenezer Scrooge, but I haven't changed them this year. So
what you should do is you should put a picture of Oliver Cromwell because he banned Christmas.
Oh,
1640. Puritans, they did. Yeah.
So,
I feel like I need to go onto
Yeah.
everything now and change my name. Although
Didn't they ban anything other than wearing black as well?
Yeah, but I mean, if we're getting into it, I think that was mainly because there was a class system about color, and they wanted to remove the class system. So it was that everyone had to wear black because then everyone was of equal status. So it wasn't necessarily about bright colors, but it was because if you were a certain trade, you'd wear certain colors, and they wanted to anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
I came from a
I'd be
Quaker
talking
town.
about Oliver Cromwell tonight, but I like that.
And, yeah, there you
and
go.
I'm in an Oliver Cromwell land because I'm in Finland this weekend, where
look
he
at
was.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Well,
This weekend. It's not the weekend. It's Wednesday, but you know what I mean. Yeah,
any day you want.
absolutely. Yeah. Goes out on a Saturday, so we'll say the weekend.
So over the 200 episodes,
yes.
Most significant moments or milestones, or particular episodes or guests.
Oh,
All right.
well, episode is the swearing episode. Every time we're asked this, I have to say the swearing episode is just a classic episode. In fact, we must put a link to the swearing episode in the
Yeah,
show
you
notes
must.
because we keep on talking about it, and then people probably won't scroll back. And it was just for so many reasons, it was just so hilarious because I knew it was going to I knew we were going to swear in it, but Mr. Coates surpassed himself.
Came out of the blocks.
When you don't expect it. It just, yeah, you were just all in. You were literally, as they would say, balls deep that night, because you just went for it, like, oh, wholeheartedly just went for it. And I have to say that is my most favorite episode that we've ever recorded. I don't think I've laughed so hard. I think at some one point I had tears streaming down my face because it was that funny. And I don't think I've ever done that. So yeah,
But
but that is genuinely my favorite episode.
But it was all the people who'd contributed. We said to people, "Oh, have you got any funny stories about your children swearing like in
Yes.
inappropriate ways?" And just the stories people were sending us, we were just bad with it, absolutely bad with it, because it was just
Hilarious.
awesome.
Yeah, it
That
was.
was that was the most fun. I was thinking about this, and I think all of our guests just thank you, right? So
Mm,
it's hard to kind of then
yeah.
pick out one person. And so people like Bethany, every time Bethany comes on, we have so much fun, and she's as dry as sticks.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
so we were,
yeah.
and often, I don't know about you, Scott, but often you pay your money and you take your chance with guests.
Yeah.
We don't do any
Absolutely.
prep. We just say, come on, and we'll see how we go. And oftentimes the people you think are going to be just awesome, just shut down.
Yeah.
And then the people who you think will be, oh, this is going to be really hard work. And I think because Beth is so dry, and
Yeah.
we thought we'll invite her on, but we know, and I think we had prepared, and we were just like, wow, she's on fire, this woman. She knocked us into a cocked hat, blimey. So she was great.
Yeah.
Have
She
you ever
was.
met
Yeah.
Honor Rhodes? That was in the first year I met. Have you, Honor Rhodes works for the Tavistock, and she was one of
No,
the
I don't think I know.
standouts, which is all the relationship clinic. And I got a message off Twitter, and she said, "Young man, you need to come and interview me for your podcast." And I went, "Oh, all right then." It was all a bit like, "Oh, okay." And as I was, it just coincidentally, I was walking past her office, so I could do it. And I said, "I'll come in." And she went, "I've got biscuits," and so I went, and she was just this awesome. And she said, "People say I'm like a suffragette," and she was literally just like a suffragette, and she was like bustles and a round pork pie hat, and she was awesome. Um, so she was amazing. I think another episode that you might remember, Scott, is the one with Sarah Lloyd.
Yeah. That was one I was going to
Yeah,
mention, Sarah Lloyd. Yeah.
yeah.
Bus model and just amazing all round
We'd still be there
Scottish woman,
now.
of course. Yeah, we would actually. Yeah, yeah. And I think what was interesting about that episode was we got so much out of her, and she's such fun. And we talked about loads of serious stuff, which is, I think, that's the premise of our podcast. We talk about something that's really, really serious, but we interject it with. We've done it tonight. We interject it with slices of humor that actually aren't offensive. Well, I hope they're not offensive. It's just, you know, I've never heard anybody say we've offended them. If we have, apologies. Actually,
Pardon,
sorry,
lawyer,
not sorry. Yeah,
the
sorry, not
lawyer
sorry.
episode.
Um, but what was interesting with Sarah was once we stopped recording, it was like a therapy session for me and Al. And and that's one of the things about this, like doing this. We have people approaching us asking to come on, and we're like, yeah, yeah, come on. And then they get on, and they can either dry up or they can be really nervous, and we're like, why you know, like we don't understand why they're nervous, kind of thing. Because to us, we do this like every week. We're churning out podcast, or it seems like we're churning out podcast. And but with Sarah, it was just like, oh, she was just one of those people. Like Al says, all of our guests have been amazing. Absolutely, we're not picking our favorite. We're just saying the ones that stand out are the ones where we've actually gotten some out of it as well. And Sarah Lloyd was one of those episodes, wasn't she?
Oh,
Absolutely amazing.
I think we talked for an hour
Watch
and a
that.
half afterwards going, and when my daughter does this, and when my son
Yeah,
does this. And it feels
yeah,
like we've got
absolutely.
so much out of it. I mean, our address book is amazing, and
Mm,
there's so many people we can call on. It's, you know,
yeah.
fantastic. And yeah, an
I mean,
absolute privilege.
and in terms of other kind of standout moments, I think the um, polyamorous couple were probably my favorite people to talk to ever on the conversations because And you can tell I was like, oh, dearie me. Because clearly adoption works very differently in America. And I know it's funny because since New Family Social have covered it on their podcast in terms of open relationships, between same-sex couples and what have you, it's fascinating. I listen to them all because I wanted to understand it more and understand kind of people's impressions and stuff like that. But this couple were they just opened both of our eyes into this world that neither of us really knew much about. Well, in our case, knew nothing about, like zero. Like, it was like, what the,
Um,
what, who? Um,
oh,
exactly.
oh,
Wait,
But
that blew his bobble hat off.
look,
It just went, didn't it?
it was just
It
constantly lit
stopped
up.
flashing. His bulbous end is gone.
Exactly. But what was so funny about that was if I ever wanted to bring Al back into check after that, I just needed to say their names, and he was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, yeah." But not because we were taking the mickey out of them, because that wasn't what it was about. It was about understanding. Because when Al had a nickname for them for a while, we'll tell you later once we stopped recording because it'd be mean to do it live on the recording. But and that's how you saw them, wasn't it? Because that's people's perceptions, but actually, to me, they changed my whole perception of what was
oh,
going on because,
yeah.
it was just fascinating to listen to. So, y-
Yes, it posed the question, though, didn't it? It said, "What do children need? What do
yeah,
actually children need?" And it made, I think,
mhm,
probably every episode we did after that, we'd like the guest would say, "Can we ask you this question? What do you think about, a throuple?" And you could see people
yeah.
going, "Oh." And I think there was a couple of social workers we had on who came back to us afterwards and said, "Can you cut that bit out?" Yeah, we'll cut that out for you.
Yeah, exactly. But there was
Oh,
also people who actually, had a like post that. There's a lot of people who actually, when we asked them about that, they gave us some
yeah.
really insightful kind of things from their end. But also, they were like, some of them were like, do you know, I'm going to have to go away and have a really big think about this because actually, if you're asking me what does a child need, and there's a couple that are just fantastic here, and there's a third in that couple, I need to invest. Do you know that kind of thing? It was like, let's just add a couple of more home visits on, speak to my manager. Let's not judge them on it. All that sort of stuff because I think we'd be
Mm.
very quick to judge as a society and say, well, they can't have a child. Which takes you back to the days where same-sex couples started to be able to adopt and that kind of thing about, well,
Oh, yeah.
two men can't have a boy because they might be pedophiles or however it was looked at by some, not by all, but by some. So I think
Oh,
that for us to create that conversation from an American couple who just randomly emailed us and for us to speak to them and then us to ask questions afterwards, whether 10 people listened to that episode or whether 100 people listened or 20,000, whatever, doesn't make any jot of a difference to me. The fact that we understand it and we are able to ask people, what do you think of
Yeah.
this? That's a,
mm.
that's a, that's a really important thing for us as podcast
And I
hosts.
think that the power of the podcast when you've got real people on, the lived experience of fostering and adoption just brings it all home to everyone. It makes it real. And, y- y- you know, in adoption particularly, as long as you're ordinarily domiciled in the country, you're over 21 and you don't have any previous convictions for serious violence or sexual offences towards children, you can potentially adopt.
Mm.
So let's open up and
Yeah, absolutely.
demystify
Hmm.
it
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like,
yeah,
come on, well, show us what you've
absolutely.
got. What do
Yeah,
children need and can you meet the
Mm.
child's
Yeah.
needs?
yeah.
Well, I feel like we're just about to be taken over by a new
Y-
podcast
I,
host, Al. He's very,
you can
very
adopt.
insightful, this man.
Hashtag. One of the. I also think that the voices of adopted people, because I think that people
Yeah.
think that I think we've been accused of sort of exploiting adopted people's voices, adult adoptees' voices. I, I'm not. I don't care what they think. I don't think we are.
No, me either.
Um,
No.
and we've always had a total open policy. We don't edit or we don't curate what people can say. And I think for me, that's probably been one of the greatest pleasures. So we didn't do it for a while. For a full year, people were asking us, and we're going, "Look, that's just not our place. We don't think it's this. We're adopters. We're not sure." So eventually,
Mm.
we rescinded because there was, and I sort of kept thinking, why isn't there an adoptee doing this?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because that would be the natural home for it. But I think some of the most moving experiences I've had on the podcast have been, and I don't know whether Scott, because we do them separately, so Scott doesn't know, Scott's not there so often. And I remember speaking to one woman who'd literally been sold as a child.
Mm.
Someone had, like, her parents had gone to it was an international adoption. No, it was a national adoption, but she was international. Um, and I just remember, and at the end of it, she just articulated that and the person she'd been bought off was now dead, and they couldn't work out where she'd come from. And that she'd done a DNA test, and she'd found a cousin in a different country, and she'd kind of sought them out, and they discovered that their story was the same, but they both did not know who bought them. And the profound impact on me, the sense of this transaction of her being a chattel. She was just chattel. She was just something. Someone wanted a baby, and they bought the next one on the list. And I think that is something you hear often amongst the adoptee community, especially in the US, for all obvious
Yeah.
reasons. But it just really affected me, and I remember being really affected. And I'm normally not like that. I'm like dead inside.
Mm.
But and I think that stuff has really informed my view on adoption, and the
You
voices
really
of
are.
adoptees. Yeah, I really am dead inside. But also the voices of
Yeah,
people like
absolutely.
Clarissa.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember Clarissa's. I remember we recorded maybe 2.5 hours, and I think Clarissa is the only person I've ever edited down to a 40-minute episode, because there was just so much heartache in that.
Mm.
And if you listen to Clarissa's episode about her child being removed, you go, how can this system be just? How can this benefit anybody in this, this so-called triangle? So all of that stuff is really lasts
Yeah,
with me and lingers with me. And
yeah. And the final thing I'd add to that actually is language as well, because I feel like our language has changed over the last 8 years in terms of the people that we've spoken to. And a lot of that is influenced by adopted adults, adult adoptees, however they're kind of defining themselves. Um, because actually, I found myself doing things very differently after listening to some of their stories about the way they may have been parented in a way that has had a negative impact on them. And for me, like raising a child with FASD as well, there's this temptation to kind of blame everything on something, all that kind of stuff. As a result of listening to what adult adoptees and adopted adults have had to say is that my parenting has changed. The way I speak about things has changed. The way I maybe approach things has changed as a result of me finding out more because of what somebody's told me. And a lot of that comes from the conversations, but also, we've had adoptees who are also adopted adults, who are also social workers, who are also, psychotherapists, whatever. And it's just that whole thing, when we first started and I was working at Adoption UK, I just thought I knew everything. Absolutely thought I knew everything, and actually I know naff all. I still know naff all actually in most
Mhm.
respects. But we could go into that later. But do you know what I'm saying? It's like I'm not the one that's had the experiences of, these children, young people who then grow into adults, they still see themselves as adopted. I remember I used to sit in a panel, and when one of the panel members used to say that she was an adoptee, I used to sit and think, but you're 40 odd years old, love. How can you still say you're an adoptee? But listening to those kind of stories and voices, I now understand actually this is that it's not just something that leaves you because you might have had a reunification or you might have had therapy or whatever. It's with you your whole bloody life. It's with
Yeah.
you until the day you die, regardless of what happens in between. So I think for me, that's the biggest impact that 200 and
Yeah.
odd episodes and the rest of it is really done for me,
Yeah.
because I'm not as kind of I know everything, you know nothing than I used to be. Um, you know, I think that
Yeah.
yeah.
Can I add something to that? Because I can't remember who I was speaking to, but it was this dawning realization, this common theme that was amongst adoptees, that they were waiting for their parents to pass before they went, their adoptive parents to pass before they went and searched.
Mm,
And I thought, oh, I kind of thought, oh, that's awful. Those adoptive parents that, the control they exerted or the emotional manipulation I know these sort of preconceived ideas why that was. And then it just dawned on me one day talking to someone, I can't remember who, or maybe over several conversations, that actually it was just out of loyalty to their parents. It wasn't anything their parents had put on them. It was just that. And so I think I remember the moment I had that conversation, I went out and sat down my adult children. I said, look, you need to know that isn't, I do not want you to do that. If you want to go and find the different adults in your lives, you will not be seen as disloyal. And it just was transformative in my relationship with them, and it just helped them reshift that. Well, we've got lots of kids, and so we've got lots of every circumstance is different, but just for those that were older and had a more sort of traditional adoption model, I felt the need to kind of air all of that stuff out and go, if you need to go, please go. That would be my wish and my desire for you. Not, don't wait till I'm dead, because who knows?
Yeah, absolutely.
I might live forever.
Yeah. God help us.
And I think the episodes, just help everyone to understand that this is has profound implications, doesn't it? And lifelong isn't a word. It just means like every single day for the rest of your life. And
yeah,
and it takes a lifetime of understanding, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's just like, and what your episodes do is just you give a window to people where there is a bit of a crack, some real seriousness, because it deserves nothing less. But it just helps people kind of see it in the real way that it is and make more sense of it. How have you kept going? I mean, you kind of, in some respects, the way in which you opened, it's effortless, because the two Ronnies that you are, you just keep it going. But what have been the biggest challenges keeping it going, apart from Scott trying to leave this world on far too many? He's bloody always after the attention, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's nearly died this time, and then nearly died another time.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Do you know? I think what's helped is actually, and this is going to sound really corny and really icky, but I think actually our partners have helped, because they've kept us together in some ways as well, because we've all become as a force. As a group, I was going to say a foursome. I thought I better not use that inference. As a group of four, we've really become very close friends. So we'll visit Al and Paula in Northumberland. They'll come to Ireland. You never came to our house in the UK. We had to move to a different country for you to actually visit us. But Al was my best man at my wedding, because I had nobody else to ask. There's various things going on there. But I think there has been, I would say there has obviously been times where probably separately we've thought, oh, can I be bothered with this? But I think then we do it, and it's just that reminder, that actually it's like a little therapy session for us as well. I know that I am literally, sometimes I come off the podcast recording and I'm sweating from laughter, as in I've laughed that much that my body is sweating, kind of thing, because we have so much bloody fun. And I'm sure that Al probably sometimes gets really frustrated with me, especially like the last couple of years, because it's not that I've not been interested, it's just I can't really do the organizing like I used to. My organizing kind of neurons have disappeared, shall we say. So, he needs to remind me that there's a podcast recording a couple of days before, because, he forgets to put it in the diary, and then he remembers that I won't remember, because, I'm a little bit deficient in the memory department nowadays. And all that kind of stuff. To the point where I was questioning my kind of commitment to it over the last couple of years since my brain thing happened. And it's not that I'm not committed to it. It's just, it's just literally that, I worry that Al thinks he's pulling me along for the ride. but he's not. Actually, I was a very big control freak as well, and he likes to keep control of things. So
That's
therefore,
so
it
not
suits
true.
him to be organized and stuff like that. That is so true. That is so true.
No, what you think it's that, but I tell you what it is I start. So you know that I started the podcast. I'm going to do a
Yeah.
podcast, and I knew that actually, I knew that. Having listened to podcasts, a podcast of me going, "Hello, my name's Al Coates. I'd like to talk to you about adoption." Like that's the end of it. Do you know what I mean? That's as far as it would ever get. People would have gone, "Oh, hell's teeth." And I knew that actually what engages people is relationship. So there's an element of soap opera about it all. So that keep people come back for it becomes familiar. It becomes like it's like the reason people listen to like the radio, and they get really attached to radio presenters because they become part of the landscape of their life. And I thought to myself that I need to commit to doing it, and I need to commit to making sure this happens. And so I took it on fully as my responsibility that this will happen. And I know that that's one of my superpowers is if I said I would do it, I will do it. And I never expect
Excuse me.
I never once expect Scott to have to do anything. I just need to tell him when to be. And I often think, oh, does he feel like I'm nagging him? When because I mean, it's so transparent. I go, "Hi, Scott, how are you?" And it's like, and I can see him thinking, yeah, he wants something. And so, but I don't, the partnership is 100% equal in my head because
Yeah.
I am deficient. It's like the two Ronnies. It is like the two Ronnies, or it's like Morecambe and Wise. Is that it's easy to look at Eric Morecambe and go, "Oh, he is what he is, and he's the real power." Without Eric Ernie Wise, he's not. He isn't. He isn't. He can't be what he is without them. And I think the same for each one of us. Scott can't be what he is, and I can't be what I am without the other. And so the division of labor is irrelevant. It's about, I said I would do it. I find it easy. I'm inclined that way, and I like answer. I'm very good at answering diplomatic. What's the diplomatic? You can't say it. Is this not?
Can't even say it. Never mind.
Diplodocus questions.
Yeah, well, we get lots of what's happened recently over the last sort of 18 months is we get increasingly American publicists going, "Hi, let me tell you about my friend who's written a book about how she used to be a cheesecake and now she's decided she wants to be an adoptive parent." And we had the Feng Shui woman who was going to heal children through Feng Shui. And so we have these texts where he goes, you answer it. I know I'm not answering it. I can't even read it yet because I'm just tears of laughter.
Yeah.
I hope the Feng Shui woman isn't listening.
I hope she doesn't listen. I hope it was a publicist that was sending her the thing about the Feng Shui.
Because she'll come round and arrange our coffee tables and destroy us.
But we've also had some, we have had some cold call emails that actually have gone somewhere and have been really popular. So we can't say it's not all welcome. But absolutely, it's there is no division of labor. And I think, the podcast conference that we did during COVID, we did three conferences.
Three.
Yeah, three conferences during COVID. Nobody else picked it up. Hello, people. Like there was conferences cancelled and there was nowhere for anybody to congregate. And we just went, let's do one online. Let's just do it. Now, 15 quid a ticket. We had the regional adoption agencies buying bulk tickets. It was just like, it was mad, actually. When I think back now, I'm like, God, I couldn't do that again because I wouldn't have the time. But, it was relevant. It was needed. We wouldn't have been able to do that unless we had the podcast. Maybe we would have done. I don't know. Maybe just our names alone would have, sold it. But
yours might have.
I think the
podcast
have. Really. No, not back then. Had I? Yeah, I'd left my job by then. So yeah. But what I'm saying? It's like all these opportunities have come up, and there is no division of labor until it comes to the admin or the marketing. Sorry, the branding. Because they're the two things that I will take control of because I always crap at them. But everything else, he just cracks on and tells me when to turn up. But it does work. But I think that it's great that Al's got that kind of ethic that, well, I agreed to do it. I've said I'm going to do this, so I'm going to do it. And we've talked before that, Al used to be a blogger, an award-winning blogger, apparently. Before we did 2 years in a trot, was it? Yeah.
Was 2 years in a row.
Still dodgy, that award, wasn't it? That second one. But anyway, and he kind of came to conclusion that it's not that it was hard work, but it was, he had to do it every week. Um, Whereas with this, you can bank these. You can't bank a blog when it's just happened. Do you know what I mean? Like you need to
Mhm.
blog about it, get it out if you've been blah blah blah. So it's very different to that kind of thing. And like Al said earlier, where are other people in the space? Yes, we've got some amazing podcasts out there, but actually the voices that matter are still not doing it. And you know, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm waffling now. You can tell.
Well,
Yeah, you might be, Scott, but you two waffle beautifully together, is what I take from that. So,
well, we have a laugh.
if you could invite a famous person, alive or dead, to Christmas Day dinner to talk fostering and adoption in the way that you used to do, who would you invite and why?
Wow. Wow.
Oh, oh, that's so any guest we could have.
Alive or dead? You've got to be famous.
They got to be famous.
Got
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
famous. Um, well, it's lots. I mean, uh, God love adoption agencies. Um, uh, there's lots. Well, if you do those memes that are famous adoptees, um, I don't know really because I think there's interesting people. Isn't there? There's people like Marilyn Monroe who were fostered, and um, Steve McQueen. That's what I'd have. Steve
Steve
McQueen. He was
McQueen,
fostered.
Tower Inferno. Yeah.
Yeah,
Christmas
yeah,
film.
yeah. So I
I'm
would have
gonna.
Steve McQueen.
For what reason would you have Stephen Quinn? Sorry,
Well,
because
Steve McQueen was
I don't really know who he is. So I've
so
heard the
Steve
name, but
McQueen was sort of he was put
Great
into
Escape.
institutional care, Great Escape, institutional care as a child and a young
right.
person, and he um kind of quite surreptitiously supported it all the way through his film
Okay.
career. He kind of was quite so that yeah, and I just think Steve McQueen would be interesting. I think he's like most amazing people, they're
Yeah.
quite problematic as well, often, aren't they? They can be
Yeah.
both.
Yeah.
So
Probably.
yeah.
I'm going to be really shallow and go for a modern day hero of mine, and that is Davina McCall. For two reasons. Number
Brilliant.
one, she obviously, well, sorry, for three reasons. Number one, she's been my favorite Big Brother presenter ever because I don't watch it anymore because Davina's not doing it. But secondly, the work that she does in terms of, you can sit and slag off long lost families till the cows come home. It's not, blah blah blah.
Hmm.
We know it's not relevant to modern day adoption and the care system and stuff like that. But she was someone who was looked after by a grandparent. And she's got such an amazing insight into that. And also more recently, obviously, she's just had brain surgery for a brain hemorrhage that
Yeah.
she
You
had
have.
kind of identified through just taking part in something randomly. So there's,
Hmm.
yeah, and I think the adoption fostering bit and the kinship bit would be really more about the kind of not the narrative that long lost family kind of rolls out, but about the future of how that's how these kind of things might look. And I'm not saying let's go make a program about it. What I'm saying is that for somebody like Davina to be kind of involved in this sector, um, that could be a massive kind of influence on change. We've seen her
Hmm.
do a lot of work with kinship care during kinship care week this year. I think it was kinship care week. Um, they've been brilliant. I was going to say the F word there properly, but I just changed it into flipping as I
Well
went through.
done.
I thought it was
Well
really
done.
well done.
7 out of 10.
Because actually, up until now, we've never seen somebody like Davina McCall actually being engaged in this. Yes, we had Nikki Campbell, and Nikki does an amazing job when he gets it right. But Davina definitely, she's yeah, I just think she's fantastic. I'd love
Mhm.
to just sit down and chat to her about it. So yeah.
Let's get her on the
Mm.
show. So,
Yeah.
your vision for the next 200 episodes.
That's stunned us into silence. I
Eh?
thought we've got to do this for another 8 years.
Well, I think we always every year we sort of have a sort of slightly informal conversation. Is it worth going? Is it working?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And people listening fluctuate. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. I think that if people still we get a steady stream of people who want to come on and tell their story. I think that's the defining thing. If people are still interested in telling their story, I'm still interested in podcasting.
Mm.
And the issues are not going away. And I think that the other side to that is we see families in desperate need who come to us and they tell their stories. And I think that you'll get it as well, Scott. You see people. We've sort of touched on FASD. We've done a lot of stuff around that, around challenging behaviour in children. And I think the need is not going away. I think I'd like to broaden out. I think that if I could, we rebranded really specifically, and if I could somehow broaden out into all of the other issues that are just more universal around children who experience adversity, caring for children who've experienced adversity, and children who are neurodivergent. That's maybe somewhere to brand out, but that would be a huge kind of right turn in terms of, or a U-turn in terms of branding. So I'm not sure.
Well, and I was just actually going to say, because we did try to kind of rebrand a little bit when we moved to the A&F podcast, so that it wasn't the words adoption and fostering. But I think we're both kind of very scared to let that original kind of brand go, because that's what we'd be known for. Plus, there's no point in us calling ourselves something else if all we talk about is adoption. Do you know, it's kind of that tricky space. So, and I was just going to say, just kind of on the back of what Al said as well, I think our demographic of guests has changed over the years, because I think if you listen to the first maybe 50, 60 episodes, you've got some real key players in adoption land and fostering land. You've got Marie Kershaw, you've got some heads of RAs, you've got, heads of adoption agencies, charities, yourself.
Children's ministers.
Children's ministers who may no longer be with us. Well, they aren't, obviously, but and I think that's changed over time, because actually we were really honoured to have these people on, and it's amazing that they did. But now that part is done. We do need to revisit some of those kind of guests again, but CEOs move on, and psychologists move on, and they go into different areas of expertise, and all that sort of stuff. So I think the demographic of the main kind of guests of the podcast has changed over time, to the point now where we're getting new organizations that are doing very different things that aren't actually specifically connected into adoption and fostering. They might be just generic services that actually include adoption, fostering, kinship. So I think that is a really interesting kind of step change that we probably haven't really recognized, but we just keep on going with it, because actually why not? Why not talk about, who was it a couple of weeks ago we spoke to Jacqueline, who is the CEO of that place down somewhere, and they kind of contact centers and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, absolutely. It was a really interesting conversation, because actually it's not something that we've talked about before. So that was great. That was really fascinating. But I think for the next 200 episodes, I think like Al said, we do ask each other that question every so often. Are we still here? The difference is, I don't care how many people listen anymore. I'm grateful people do listen, but the figures don't really. It's like, people are still listening.
Doesn't drive us.
Whether it's 20,000 a month or whether it's 2,000 a month now, it's up and down, like Al says, and for me it's not really relevant anymore. I'm just grateful that people do listen, and and people come on to talk to us as well. So
one of the things that doing the Churchill Fellowship, and so I'm going to publish. Sorry to mention that, Scott.
Oh God, Imagine putting your sales pitch into your podcast.
Well, no, but what I'm trying to do in the behind the scenes is I'm trying to do almost like a podcast documentary about a specific topic, and I'm finding it really difficult because I've never done it before, but actually really fascinating to go into a deep dive into stuff in a way that is really accessible. So if I had money and time, if someone could pay me to do it, I would go off and do things like, how do we prepare adopters? I could do a 2C and interview some key players and some people. I would love if money was no object and time was, and there was two of me, I would do that. I would go into because there's so many issues within, like maintaining family links, like child to parent violence, like neurodiversity, like how do we support birth parents once their children are removed, or not, that includes fostering, and because I think that's a huge problem, and so I think there's these areas that there's a different way of investigating it and looking into it, and that would be something if I had more time. Is maybe that is maybe something for the future. I don't know.
Mm.
Maybe just committed to something. I have to get this one done
Yeah,
first, don't I? But
nice.
I've got.
There's lots of food for thought there in terms of where
Mhm.
you go next, the next 200 episodes. Before I ask you the last question, I've got another nice one for the two of you. What do you love about each other? Because one of the things I think that makes the podcast so good is obviously you two and your relationship together. So let's just get it out on the table. What do you love about each other? Come on.
He's the yin to my yang when it comes to adoption and fostering. I have to say that is quite true because we've never had an argument. We've been a bit thingy with each other sometimes, maybe a bit dry with each other sometimes, but we've never had a proper blown out argument where I've gone, Alcoats, if I never see you again, it will be
Oh,
too soon, kind of thing. Never done anything like that. But I think
we.
that actually what I
It's
love
come
about
close over color schemes on
oh yeah,
on
branding. Yeah,
advertising.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I revoked his access on the design system that
On
we use to do
Canva.
the podcast stuff. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's as close as we've really gotten to having an argument, actually. Um, but what do I love about Al? I love the perspectives that he brings to it. And this is going to sound really kind of professional, but he's helped me with a lot of thinking differently about things that have happened personally as well because of the way his brain works. So it's not about being social worked. I wouldn't say it's about being social worked, but there's been a lot of things that he's had happen to him, and when it's happened to me, I've asked him about it. Things like children being arrested and things like that, talking about that kind of stuff. And I think that's what I love about him because he always comes back and he's always chill about it. Doesn't mean to say I'm going to chill straight away, but within a couple of days I'm like, oh, I was right. It kind of, in the grand scheme of things, yes, it's happened. Yes, it was an issue at the time, but actually, it's good. So he does bring in that kind of professional side, but on a personal level for me. And I think that's probably why, yeah, that's probably one of the main things I like about him. Because let's be honest, we've nothing else in common. Absolutely not. If you took us away from the podcast and away from this world that we inhabit, we have nothing. We have literally nothing in common.
Not one thing.
Not one thing.
Not one thing. I like
That is
Scott.
a genuine statement as well.
No, no, no. We've got no reason to like each other. Um, I I would say the best thing about Scott is he makes me look good.
That's mean.
No,
That's copper as
that is
well.
mean. That is mean because you were so lovely about me. Um, I think Scott, I can be quite. I know that I can be what I am, which is a bit,
Arse.
yeah, bit of an arse. And I think Scott brings in all of the podcasts we do together, Scott always surprises me because he brings sort of an honesty, and he brings it back down to reality where I can get a bit high thinking, and Scott always brings it back down to the reality of lived experience. And I think that and I think that I just find that so helpful just to kind of go, yeah, that grounds it in what people are actually living in. Um, I, I just, I just like him. I just love the fact that we can take the piss out of each other, and we do. We absolutely do. And it doesn't. It never. It's always taken in the measure it's meant. I would never want to hurt Scott.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
oftentimes, like if we haven't done it tonight, but often if we're interviewing someone, and I'll go, you ask. I'll message him. You ask this question. He'll go,
Yeah.
no. And I go, oh, please ask this. And then he'll send me a message. Go, if you would, and then he'll send me a message. Go back. If you'd shut up, I would ask a flipping question.
Yeah,
And then,
exactly.
and so we
We
just,
should
It's
do a
also got
freedom of information request on all of those messages.
yeah, you can
yes,
imagine. Thankfully,
Yeah,
we're not a public funded thingy, but also it's gotten us out of some scrapes because it's like this isn't going anywhere. This interview, is it? So should we just wrap it up and
yeah,
kind of leave stage left kind of thing? So it's worth for that as well. Yeah.
yeah,
lovely, lovely. What is your
yeah.
Christmas wish for all the foster carers,
Oh, and the children.
adoptees,
Oh.
Oh,
adoptees? birth family members, all those people that you care so deeply about and that you have spent hours and hours and hours of your own time off your own back, like caring about and talking about.
Um, well, I think for me, I want to see justice. I want people to have a sense of justice and to be done right by. And I remember speaking to a. This is not for the podcast. It was not. It was just I work. I do some work. I'm a trustee for a charity who supports families who've got children in care. And I remember speaking to a young woman with a learning disability who was 19, and she tells the story of walking out of the High Court alone on her own, and she's lost her two children, and she's 19. She's got a learning disability. She has nowhere to sleep. And I thought, no matter what she's done, that doesn't add up. No matter there's nothing she can do that justifies that response to her. And I think that you hear those stories again and again and again from adoptees who've the injustice, and that stuff gets me absolutely livid. And that's the stuff that means I'll do another podcast and I'll send a snarky tweet to her and I'll get people like an MP on and ask them. Well, we didn't ask them very difficult questions, did we, Minister?
No,
We did, I think. I can't
he
remember.
loosened up in the end. He loosened up in the end.
We warmed him up, bless him.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'd really agree with Al on that. I think I now traverse two very different countries in terms of care systems, foster care, adoption. It's all very different in Ireland to the way it is in the UK. I've learned so much more. And I don't think that anybody, don't think it matters which country you're in. I think we're all having the same issues. We're all having the same problems. And I think that's the key thing. It's about the kind of, and that's maybe one of the contributions that we make with the podcast actually is, making sure that, anybody who listens, they kind of understand that they need to be thinking more about the people that are the more that about the people that are doing the caring and parenting and nurturing, but also the people that are going through that as well. An example would be, in Ireland, we've still got social workers who are taking on the elementary training of what is FASD. Social workers who've maybe been in social work careers for 10 years still don't know what FASD is. And that's a really telling sign of, a kind of system that's not just failing the children in the care system, but failing most children across the board. So, that's where I guess, yeah, that's where kind of my heart would lie in terms of, people saying, what do you want to, what do you want to give to people? It's about that messaging of kind of, just start looking after the people that we need to be looking after and, affording them the respect that they should get for doing whether they're in care or whether they're a foster care or kinship care or residential care, it doesn't matter. It's, just kind of have that kind of understanding, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, chaps, I'd like to, on behalf of your listeners, thank you for the 200 plus episodes. And here's to the future 200 plus episodes.
Yeah. Well, I guess I want to thank everyone for listening because I think we sometimes get feedback, we sometimes don't, but we really appreciate everything we get, and I think it's made it worthwhile because occasionally you'll bump. I mean, Scott, you bumped into someone, didn't you?
I did. This is not because we haven't spoken since actually, and this is just a little just a little bit to add to the frivolities of tonight. I was on
showbiz.
When I was away for those 3 weeks. I've just come back from where I nearly died again. On the first week, there was actually people on the cruise ship, and a same-sex couple, and one of them came up to me and went, "Are you Scott?" And I went, "Yeah." And I was thinking, "Oh, damn, I'm in for it now." And this guy was a guest with his husband and their two kids on the cruise ship that they adopted as a result of the A&F podcast, and that was his genuine message. He said, "We adopted because we listened to the podcast to kind of give ourselves an insight into what adoption was all about. And you really inspired us to go for it. And, we've now got a 7 and 11-year-old," he said, "and it was because of you." And I was just like absolutely blown away on a cruise ship. Um, to kind of hear that message was just absolutely brilliant. And, yes, infamy, they've all got it, infamy, but it's not about having a face that your mother would smack, but it's like somebody recognized me and took the time, got over their kind of shyness to be able to pop over to me and say, "Are you Scott?" Now I kind of know how like some famous people would feel, but I didn't react in a way that maybe some of them would go, "Just leave me alone, no photographs, please," that kind of thing. And it's like genuine interest in his story, and that's fascinating when you've got that kind of level of engagement from potential listeners. So,
Yeah,
and if he's
it's
listening,
good stuff.
thank you for doing that, because actually, it was a really great thing to hear from somebody in person, not just an email or feedback on Apple Podcasts or whatever they're called. That was, for me, that was everything. That was absolutely everything. Needless
That's
to say,
amazing.
I messaged Al straight away and said, "Do you ever get this?" And he went, "No."
Never happened to me.
So yeah.
And that was just as the big wave was hitting the boat, and you all
Yeah.
both nearly went straight over into the sea. It's like the end of Titanic, this story.
Yeah,
I
I
love
know.
it.
It is,
I
isn't
love
it? It's
it.
like the
It was
Poseidon
either
adventure.
Titanic or the Poseidon Adventure, but that's for next year. We'll talk about that in our New Year's episode, I'm sure. My near-death experience, I'm sure.
Wonderful, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for putting it all together for everybody. You are making a difference, and it's just been a privilege to hear your story and to reflect together. So I hope you both have a great Christmas,
And you.
and I look forward to hearing it all again next year. So
Mm.
big love.
And thank you
Thank you.
for hosting tonight, Mark, or offering to host and us grabbing you.
Absolute pleasure to crowbar my way in, and I'll do it again.
Excellent. So, well,
Thank you.
to end this 200th episode, there is only one thing that can be said. So
There
come on,
is.
Mark. If you do listen, you'll know what's to be said.
No, I don't know.
I
Can't even remember what this is called.
Yeah, who am I? Bon Jovi.
Bon Jovi.
Anchovy.
Yeah.